What if everything you thought you knew about your partner, your marriage, and your home turned out to be a lie? This is the story of how one seemingly ordinary day became the tipping point for a husband whose world was about to be turned upside down. The front entrance to our house is rarely used. We typically enter through the side door leading to the garage or the sliding glass doors that open to the patio. To the right of the entryway is the formal living room, which is always kept immaculate but is the least used room in our home. To the left at the end of the entry hall is a hallway connecting to 3 bedrooms, including our spacious master suite and a guest bathroom. The formal living room, always dark due to the heavy curtains, has a white camelback sofa against the back wall, flanked by large wingback chairs on either side, all facing a walnut coffee table. This room, usually unimportant, became a significant spot one fateful morning. I found myself in one of the wingback chairs, facing away from the archway between the entry and the living room, contemplating my life and the potential fallout from my crumbling marriage. The thought of ending things with Sarah, my wife, brought a slew of worries. Our friends picking sides, the loss of our home, alimony payments, legal expenses, and my net worth being cut in half. But above all, dealing with Sarah's vengeful nature was a daunting prospect. In the midst of my thoughts, I heard the side door open. Sarah returning from grocery shopping. I should have pretended to be in our bedroom to avoid another confrontation. If she found me here, it would surely lead to another argument. Sarah had a knack for starting fights over trivial things, or for no reason at all, keeping me constantly on edge. She could drag out arguments for weeks over the most minor issues, and I always ended up appeasing her, thinking it was better to end the disputes quickly. Life with constant tension was unbearable, and I always aimed to resolve conflicts as soon as possible. After a decade of marriage, I saw no solution other than death or divorce. Still, I kept trying to improve things, mainly for my own sanity rather than to make life easier for Sarah. I heard the freezer door close, knowing she had put away the frozen food. Expecting her to call me to bring in the rest of the groceries, I braced myself for her orders and criticism. To avoid her as long as possible, I stayed still, waiting for her call or whistle. The whistle, similar to one you would use for a dog, had become almost intolerable. Instead of her voice, I heard light footsteps as she approached the entryway. If I had looked, I would have seen her stop at the tiled entry floor, peering down the hallway to make sure she was alone. Quietly, she seemed to consider calling me from the car before coming inside, but assumed I was busy working on the gazebo in the backyard. Seconds later, I heard her cell phone beep as she dialed a number. Now standing just 5 feet away from the back of the chair where I sat, Sarah began talking to someone about plans for Thursday afternoon. She mentioned calling him at work after 1 o'clock and went over the details of their meeting. Still unnoticed, I listened as Sarah wrapped up the call with a cheerful goodbye. I heard the flip phone close and her footsteps retreat across the carpet toward the sliding glass door. She whistled and called out to me, thinking I was working on the gazebo project in the backyard. She had no idea I was sitting right there, my heart pounding and my breath heavy. I've faced tense situations before, thanks to my time in the Army and other experiences. The first rule is not to panic unless you are under direct attack. Use your knowledge to your advantage. Choose the right moment to act. Keep a neutral expression, control your breathing, and appear normal. I stood up and walked into the den saying, "I'm here. I was in the bathroom. I've got to run to the hardware store and get some parts for the gazebo." I walked through the den toward the kitchen and the side door, avoiding eye contact with her. As I passed by, she noticed my flushed face and told me to wear a hat, worried about sunburn. She did not want to see my skin peeling in a few days. She also reminded me about the groceries that needed to be brought in and told me not to be gone all day. After she dropped her phone into her purse on the kitchen counter, Sarah went out to inspect my work on the gazebo, leaving her criticisms for later. Her communication style was typical, mostly consisting of instructions and either implied or outright criticism. As she walked into the backyard, I grabbed her phone, checked the last dialed number, memorized it, and put the phone back in her purse. After bringing in the groceries, I left in my small pickup truck, but instead of heading to the hardware store, I drove to a nearby park. For the first 15 minutes, I replayed the short conversation in my mind, making sure I remembered every word. There was no doubt about its meaning. Sarah was having an affair, likely in our house, maybe even in our bed while I was at work. Furious, I felt like I was funding her infidelity by working to support her. Who was the man she called Daddy? It was not her real father. The area code was local, and her parents lived 1,000 miles away in California. Early in our marriage, she sometimes called me Daddy during sex, though she had stopped doing so. I thought it might have been a hint at wanting kids, but we decided not to have children a couple of years into the marriage. She was undoubtedly a daddy's girl. I considered my options. Her lover would likely enter through the back gate on Thursday, probably walking down the alley. I thought about confronting him there, but I also needed to deal with my cheating wife. If the lover was on foot, his car had to be nearby. It struck me that he would probably leave his car at the park. Figuring out who this person was became crucial. The obvious approach was to call the number from her cell phone. Having someone else make the call, pretending it was a wrong number, seemed like a good idea, and a woman would be more likely to get information. Who could make that call? Who else might know about this affair? The answer was clear: Sarah's best friend Jenny. If Jenny did not know, I doubted anyone else did. Sarah's sister was unlikely to have any information since they had been estranged since her sister's messy divorce. Could I ask Jenny? I had known her as long as Sarah had, and Jenny had always been my friend too. However, women tend to be more loyal to each other than to their spouses. Jenny was married to Tom, who was 15 years older than her, and they seemed to have the most loving marriage. I figured Jenny would tell Tom almost anything. Would she reveal information about Sarah, though? Did I consider Tom a friend? We were not close friends, but Tom was a stand-up guy, and I would have thought he would have told me if he knew something like this. I decided to try Tom. That meant driving to the golf course, where Tom, semi-retired, volunteered on Saturdays as a goodwill ambassador in exchange for a free round of golf during the week when the course was not busy. On the way there, I planned my approach carefully. I could not just blurt it out. What if it got back to Jenny and then to Sarah? I had to be discreet. Riding in a golf cart with Tom as he checked on conditions at the 7th hole, I brought up a hypothetical question. I asked him how he handled confidential conversations. Did he feel obligated to keep them secret, or would he share them with Jenny? Tom gave me an odd look and continued driving for several yards. I clarified, asking if he and Jenny always shared what they heard from other people, even if it was confidential. It was just a hypothetical scenario. Tom pulled over onto the grass, turned to look directly at me and said, "Do you have a specific question for me? If you do, ask away," maintaining an intense look on his face. I asked Brad if he could keep our conversation confidential if I posed a question. I assured him that I would not bring it up unsolicited, but if Jenny were to ask, I would not lie to her. That was my operating principle. Brad seemed to understand my need for discretion and agreed. Composing myself, I directly asked him if he knew anything about a possible affair my wife, Sarah, might be having. To make it clearer, I asked if he had any knowledge of Sarah being unfaithful, either currently or in the past. Brad's response came out in a rush, like a dam breaking. He recounted an incident from last New Year's Eve at the Holden's party. Everyone was outside preparing for the fireworks display when Jenny fell ill from the champagne. Despite her infrequent drinking, she went upstairs to the bathroom on the landing. While she was getting sick, someone tried the doorknob. After washing up and leaving the bathroom, she heard noises coming from down the hall where it turns towards the bedrooms. Thinking someone else might be ill, she walked down and looked. There, at the end of the hallway, was Sarah, pinned against the wall by some big guy. He had her legs wrapped around his waist. Sarah saw Jenny, smiled, and gestured for her to leave. On the way home, Jenny shared the details with Brad. Jenny and Sarah, being longtime friends, felt the need to discuss the matter before taking any action. Jenny suggested telling me immediately, but ultimately, she had a conversation with Sarah. Sarah claimed the incident was a one-time thing, fueled by drinks, a fight with me, and aggressive advances from the guy Buddy White, a known bully who married into money. Jenny, aware of Buddy's reputation, decided to keep it quiet, not wanting to jeopardize my marriage over a single incident. However, Brad made it clear to Jenny that if I ever asked directly, he would not lie. The burden of this secret had weighed heavily on Brad for the past 5 months, and he was relieved to finally tell me. He was deeply sorry for what I was going through, but unfortunately, it was not over. Brad revealed that Jenny had recently overheard Sarah talking to Buddy on the phone indicating the affair had not ended. He suggested we head back to his place to discuss things with Jenny. We left the golf course in separate vehicles and headed to Brad and Jenny's house. Brad broke the news to Jenny, who sat down in tears. She had harbored high hopes for Sarah and me, willing to offer any support she could. However, upon learning that the affair was ongoing, Jenny felt a sense of betrayal similar to mine. Until now, she had believed Sarah's assurances that the affair had ended and had based her actions, or rather inaction, on that falsehood. "Jenny, there's something you could do for me," I said. "I checked Sarah's phone and I have the number she called. Would you mind giving him a call? Pretend it's a wrong number and try to get his name? I need to confirm who she's involved with now." Jenny, an editor working remotely with a PhD in English literature and a theater background, devised the call with her finest acting and social engineering skills. She opted for her impeccable English accent, which always left a lasting impression. Dialing with the phone on speaker, she heard, "Hi, this is Buddy White." Jenny blinked and said, "Sorry, wrong number." Although unsatisfying, the revelation was clear. Sarah had not ended the affair with Buddy. Discussing our next steps, I insisted on catching the two of them during their upcoming Thursday encounter to have substantial evidence. I wanted to confront Sarah armed with facts, catching her in the act and exposing the lies she would inevitably tell. Expressing reluctance to hire a detective due to costs and uncertainty about Sarah's interactions before Thursday, I sought a swift means to gather evidence. They fell into contemplative silence for a minute or more. Jenny suggested the idea of a mole, someone like Sarah's best friend to extract the truth from her. I was skeptical, but Jenny insisted, saying, "Never underestimate an angry woman. I've had enough of Sarah and how she's treated us all. I believe I can craft a story that will compel her to divulge everything." Over the next hour, we devised a plan. Jenny urgently called Sarah, claiming a desperate need for help and arranging a Sunday morning coffee meeting. Brad modified Jenny's old purse to hold a video camera, recording every word and facial expression. By noon on Sunday, we anticipated having substantial information. Jenny promptly contacted Sarah, referencing a situation similar to the New Year's party. Sarah agreed to the meeting, secretly pleased with her friend's newfound assertiveness. Jenny arrived early at the coffee shop, choosing a table under an awning, arranging her purse with the concealed camera, ensuring the optimal angle, and conducting audio tests. She positioned chairs strategically, with calm air eliminating wind noise possibilities. She set it up for one-button recording, the 16 GB card offering ample storage. Brad had ingeniously secured the camera and purse with Velcro straps, disguising lens and mic holes within the purse's pattern. Jenny was prepared. As Sarah arrived, Jenny asked her to grab coffee, mentioning she would save their spot in the most secluded area. Jenny pressed the button when Sarah returned with the drinks, swiftly confirming the recording. They quickly covered the basics, and Jenny began her tale. Jenny expressed her dilemma to Sarah, mentioning a guy who was interested in her and that she did not know what to do, describing him as attractive, especially since it had been ages since she and Brad had been intimate. Jenny shared that Brad completely trusted her and that she had never cheated on him. However, she admitted feeling tempted now and sought Sarah's advice. Sarah responded by encouraging Jenny, saying, "Go for it, girl. Honestly, I can't fathom why you haven't done this sooner. Brad's nice and all, but honey, he's past his prime. You're still young and cute. I've always admired your looks, but I've never understood why you waste your time with Brad." Jenny, surprised by Sarah's lack of remorse, asked if the New Year's party incident was truly a one-time thing. Sarah explained, "Honey, I won't lie to you. I had to tell you that at the time, or you might have spilled the beans. But now that you're in a similar situation, we can share everything. In fact, we can have some real steamy discussions." Jenny, now fully engaged, asked, "How did it start with you and Buddy? Are you still seeing him?" Sarah, with a gleam in her eye, responded, "Oh, absolutely. It all started at the Holden's Halloween party. Buddy had been eyeing me for months. We met discreetly on the landing and ended up in the bathroom. The encounter was passionate, to say the least. And yes, I am still seeing him. We'll be meeting next week in my own bed." Jenny expressed concern about me, asking if Sarah felt any guilt. Sarah dismissed it, saying, "Paul's a husband, not a lover. They serve different roles. Paul is there to do what I want, and Buddy is there for good sex. I keep Paul around because he's a good provider and follows orders." I used little tactics like checking for perfume to make him think I'd never cheat. It's like having a little puppet to control. Jenny, shocked by Sarah's brazenness, asked if she had other lovers. Sarah smirked and said, "Honestly, I can't count them all." The revelation was staggering. Jenny, who had thought she was helping a friend, was now fully aware of the depth of Sarah's betrayal. We had enough to confront Sarah, but the challenge would be in doing it the right way. In our first year of marriage, Sarah had an affair with a guy she met at the supermarket. She never told him her real name, and they hooked up in various hotel rooms for 6 months until he got too attached. Sarah advised Jenny to be cautious with younger guys. After that, there were several one-night stands, including a salesman who was into kinky stuff, which worked well as he only visited town a few times a year. Sarah had kept Buddy around longer than any of the others, describing him as a relentless pursuer with a lot of stamina. She mentioned that Buddy was married to a clueless woman who worked while he played around and that she controlled when he could visit her. Jenny then asked Sarah about her latest affair, and Sarah launched into her fabricated story about a fictional lover named Rod. The details were irrelevant, but Sarah believed every word, encouraging Jenny to take full advantage of her situation. Jenny expressed amazement at Sarah's control over her affairs and doubted if she could ever treat Brad the way Sarah treated me. Sarah explained the dynamics in the animal kingdom, comparing dominant individuals to the rest of the pack. She asserted her alpha position over me and encouraged Jenny to take on a similar role with Brad, assuring her that freedom would be hers. Sarah suggested starting with Rod and enjoying every second, stating that Brad would still be there and would fit into his natural submissive role. Sarah addressed concerns about sexually transmitted diseases and asked if Jenny used protection. Jenny explained that she usually made the guy use a condom, but with Buddy, it was different due to his aggressiveness. Jenny mentioned getting scared once because it hurt to pee, but the doctor said it was irritation from rough sex. There was a time when she got infected with gonorrhea, and after that, she was more careful. Sarah explained how she kept that from me by allowing me to go out with friends, mentioning my interest in playing guitar with them. She looked at me deadpan and gave me the choice, leading to a confrontation later when she took antibiotics. Jenny, eager to get the recording back to Brad and me, thanked Sarah and left for home. The conspirators watched the video, appalled. Jenny and Brad could hardly recognize Sarah because she was never so harsh on me when others were around. I was shocked, though not as much as they were, having come to know that Sarah was capable of almost anything. Jenny brought up Anita White and mentioned her concerns about Anita's knowledge of her husband's infidelity. She expressed the dilemma of whether to inform Anita about Buddy being with Sarah, considering the risk of blowing the cover. Jenny described Anita as seeming deeply unhappy with her husband's reputation as a bully and pondered if Anita might be entirely cowed by him. Jenny suggested that talking to Anita might affect her plans and sought help from Sarah in handling the situation. Jenny thanked us for our assistance and assured us that we would be kept out of further details. She specifically asked me not to do anything stupid in response. I acknowledged the mistakes I had made over the past 10 years, but clarified that I did not intend anything violent. I assured them that I would handle the situation my way and requested strict confidentiality. I asked everyone to avoid answering if Anita called, taking full responsibility. Later that evening, Jenny phoned Anita White and introduced herself. She confirmed they had talked at the Holden's parties and asked if Anita could talk freely. Jenny then broached the subject, revealing that Buddy was cheating on Anita with someone Jenny knew. She expressed regret and conveyed Anita's right to know. Silence followed on the other end, with Jenny discerning sniffles and sobs. Anita shared her frustration, mentioning past issues that Buddy claimed were resolved a year ago. She had taken him back based on his promise, with a clear warning of ending the relationship if he repeated his mistakes. Jenny offered comfort and assistance, expressing a willingness to help based on Anita's decision. Anita appreciated the concern and outlined her resolution. She emphasized that her partner would never share her bed again, detailing the terms of a stringent prenuptial agreement that would leave him penniless in case of divorce due to proven infidelity. She described him as unfit for employment, good only for accompanying her to events, and engaging in extramarital affairs. She affirmed her determination to ensure he faced the consequences. In response to my offer to gather evidence, Anita committed to maintaining composure for a few days until she had the evidence in her hands. Plans were made for someone to collect preliminary evidence from my office the next day. Jenny arranged a meeting, contacting me at work to schedule an appointment in her office on Monday at 1 p.m. Entering Jenny's office with a video camera, I introduced myself to Mrs. White, the wife of the man involved with my wife. I placed the camera on her desk, cued the relevant section, and played the recording. Despite the faint screen visibility, the audio quality was excellent. Witnessing Mrs. White's tears, I offered a comforting gesture, acknowledging her familiarity with her husband's behavior over time. Subsequently, I revealed my plans to Anita, stating that participation was optional, but extending the offer nonetheless. Anita disclosed the years of intimidation she had endured, expressing her desire to turn the tables and make her husband suffer. When asked about potential violence, I acknowledged that things might get messy, but assured her I had no intention of causing harm. Following the meeting with Anita, work became an unwelcome distraction. Lingering effects of Sarah's words in the video affected me deeply. While acknowledging some truth in her remarks, I defended my conciliatory nature, understanding her perception of me as weak. Despite the hurt, I contemplated showcasing a different side of myself on Thursday, pondering how Sarah would react to a more assertive approach. I dismissed any idea of reconciliation, recognizing the irreparable loss of trust in our relationship. Tuesday and Wednesday were marked by reduced office productivity as I meticulously reviewed potential scenarios. The complexity of variables reminded me of the fragility of well-laid plans. Multiple potential outcomes, including my preferred approach, were considered. Thursday's events would necessitate improvisation, and I dedicated time to refining my physical abilities in anticipation. At home, tensions prevailed, limiting conversations to necessities. Sarah, typically assertive, observed my recent behavior, aiming to understand the issue and regain control. Ironically, she found herself anticipating Thursday, speculating on the potential insights a passionate encounter with Buddy might provide. On Tuesday night, as Sarah showered, I searched my dresser drawers for a childhood keepsake from my grandfather. Both my father and grandfather had military backgrounds. Grandpa, after Normandy, had acquired a set of steel knuckles from a German soldier as a war souvenir. As I examined the menacing steel equipment, I recalled Grandpa's caution about its use, but acknowledged that it might be handy someday. That day had nearly arrived. It was a form of war. Sarah and her lover had engaged in unfair play, prompting me to force a hearty breakfast on Thursday. I knew I would not eat lunch, but hoped to slow down my rival. Pacing in my office, I deposited items in the guest bedroom, contingent on Sarah's choice of waiting in the backyard or returning inside after opening the gate. Regardless, I could adapt. Manipulating the set of knuckles on my desk, I paced, stoking my controlled anger. By 1 o'clock, I changed into jeans, a t-shirt, and sturdy running shoes. Checking my pockets, cell phone, keys, knuckles, and wallet, I called Sarah from my desk phone to preempt her call. The conversation was calm and non-threatening, explaining meetings and phone unavailability, anticipating a possible delay in returning home. Sarah interpreted my call as a sign of returning docility, relaxing with this knowledge. Perhaps she'd reward me with makeup sex that evening. She prepared to meet her lover, and the two drove to the park in 20 minutes. Loverboy's car was absent, so Anita dropped him off, and he jogged to our house, slipping into the backyard through the side gate. Positioned behind a bush at the end of the house, away from the garage, I waited, ready to confront him. I waited nervously, checking the muted phone for the time. At 1:45, Sarah emerged into the backyard, wearing a string bikini. She walked to the back gate, unlocked it, and surveyed the alley. After closing the gate, she settled into a lounge chair under the pecan tree, which was my signal. I had left the side gate ajar. Slipping back through the opening, I circled to the front door and used my key to open it. Walking over the spot where my wife's betrayal had been exposed days earlier, I entered. In the spare room, I grabbed a cordless drill and some hardware. Entering the master bedroom, I quickly installed a hasp on the inside of the door, leaving a lock hanging. Placing a small piece of wood between the door edge and the jamb, I ensured it would not close just in case Sarah tried to shut it. Heart pounding, I took the drill to the guest room, picked up the video camera, adorned my right hand with brass knuckles, and waited. Many things could have gone wrong. Sarah could have unlocked the gate earlier, or her lover could have arrived prematurely. Fortunately, none of that occurred. With controlled breath, I awaited the final confrontation, planned and executed on my terms. Standing with brass knuckles on my right hand, I held the video camera, peering through the slightly open guest bedroom door. The dark hallway might impact video quality, but the audio would be crucial. As the sliding glass door moved, voices emerged, Sarah's laughter mingling with a male growl. Imagining the man's hands on her, I glimpsed my wife, her bikini top already discarded, entering the master bedroom with her lover, neglecting to close the door. I followed at a distance, still recording. Kneeling at the door, I observed Buddy embracing Sarah, who closed her eyes and unbuttoned his shirt. Carefully, I set the video camera on the dresser inside the door, capturing the unfolding scene on the bed. This waiting was the most challenging part. I needed to record the undeniable act, leaving no room for denial. Fueled by suppressed rage, I retreated from the door and stood prepared, limiting my peeks to avoid detection. I observed the couple caressing, both now undressed. With an entire afternoon ahead, they took their time, surrendering to passion. Outside the door, I overheard Sarah referring to Buddy as Daddy, confirming my suspicions about her daddy issues. Anticipating retribution, I could not wait to confront them. I heard Buddy's voice expressing eagerness. Peeking again, I saw the man between Sarah's legs, then witnessed the plunge and heard her scream in an unprecedented manner. They began moving together, uttering curses and unintelligible sounds. Having seen enough, I touched the brass knuckles for luck and silently approached the bed. Sarah noticed me just before I forcefully shoved Buddy in the ribs, ejecting him from her. Screaming, I accused Buddy of violating my wife. Shocked, Buddy's face transformed, and he reverted to his bullying demeanor, moving to confront me. I withdrew a few steps as Buddy turned the far corner of the bed, heading towards me. Misinterpreting my move as a retreat, Sarah, now on her knees, clutched the covers, yelling for me to get out and not hurt Buddy. I shifted back on my trailing foot, took a running step, and hurled myself into Buddy's chest, delivering the brass knuckles forcefully to his solar plexus. We crashed to the floor with my full weight compressing his chest. In situations where breathing is compromised, all other considerations become irrelevant. Buddy pushed, attempting to dislodge me, emitting a high-pitched whining noise, struggling for breath. Panic filled his eyes. Sitting up and straddling my opponent, I observed Buddy's hands pressing on the floor, trying to find a better position to breathe. I then delivered the coup de grace, raising my right hand high and bringing the steel on my fist down directly onto the center of Buddy's terrified face with considerable force. With nowhere for his head to recoil and mitigate the blow, I heard bones crunch satisfyingly and witnessed blood pouring from Buddy's ruined face. Hindered by blood flowing into his mouth and throat, Buddy was completely incapacitated. I got up, walking towards the door, content with the initial confrontation, ignoring Sarah's screams until her plea for help reached me. Realizing she thought I was leaving, I kicked the small wood piece away from the jamb, closed the door, and locked the hasp in place. Turning to face Sarah, I observed her expression shift from anger to frantic realization that we were all locked in. She was undressed and had no protection from this unpredictable version of her husband. In response, she altered her tone, pleading with me. "Paul, oh Paul, I know it looks bad, but he forced me into this. He's a bully. He threatened to hurt me and you too. He said he would destroy you to have me." I had to do it. I didn't want to. Approaching the bed slowly as she delivered her explanations, I maintained a stoic expression. "Shut up. You're lying. I know you've been involved with him for months," I stated sternly, dismissing her with a command. Redirecting my attention to the wounded man on the floor, who was gurgling and showing signs of distress, I made it clear that I wanted Buddy hurt, not dead. Carefully positioning him close to the iron bedstead, I placed him on his side for blood drainage. Retrieving 5 pairs of handcuffs from the top dresser drawer, I proceeded to secure Buddy's ankles and wrists to the bedstead with 4 of them. Returning to Sarah, I maneuvered her legs off the bed, secured her hands behind her back, and guided her into the bathroom, seating her on the toilet. I conveyed a stern message, urging her not to cause any damage, and insisting that it was time for her to confess. While speaking, I emphasized the presence of brass knuckles on my right fist, ensuring she noticed them. I demanded the complete narrative, how she met Buddy, the reasons behind her actions, and why she thought it acceptable to betray me. Additionally, I sought details about her involvement with other men over the past decade, making it clear that we had ample time to unravel the story throughout the afternoon. Sarah made a calculated decision, realizing that I was not going to let her off easily. She knew some details about her actions would come to light. I could sense Sarah was unsure of how much I really knew. Questions swirled in my mind. Could she manipulate the story to make her infidelity seem less treacherous? Was she daring enough to lie to my face? Sarah hesitated, claiming she never intended for things to unfold this way. She recounted how a dominant, aggressive man had approached her at a party hosted by the Hollands, eventually luring her upstairs. She insisted she had found herself in a vulnerable position, with no one around to help. Curious about the specifics, I asked, "What party was that?" Sarah seemed to realize she was cornered, suspecting that either Sue or Nick had exposed her. She insisted that Sue had only seen her at the New Year's party, but I reminded her it was Halloween when she had been with Buddy over 20 times. Determined to get to the truth, I pressed her about who might have revealed her secret. With a defiant look, Sarah replied, "You'd be surprised. How many people do you think Buddy has told? Maybe it was one of them. But that doesn't matter. If Sue told you this, I'll claw her eyes out. I know something about her that will wreck her marriage, and I'll use it." Sarah then claimed that the story about Sue's fictional lover Rod was her invention, designed to extract information from me. She described how they had orchestrated their conversations, with Sue recording everything and storing it on multiple DVDs to be sent out at her discretion. Sarah clarified that Sue hadn't initially informed her about the situation, and that she hadn't provided specific details about the New Year's party. I pointed out that I learned about her extensive history during a video conversation. I recalled a phone call Sarah made to her lover last Saturday in our entryway, where she openly expressed affection for him and inadvertently disclosed everything about her past. Convinced I had enough information, I informed her that any further communication should be directed to my lawyer and that legal papers would be served in a couple of days. I mentioned the need to consult with an attorney about our situation. I pulled out my cell phone and called Anita to handle the situation. After a brief conversation, I chuckled and ended the call. Marching Sarah back into the bedroom, I showed her the sorry state of her lover. Undressed, handcuffed, wheezing, and covered in blood, almost causing her to vomit. I deposited her on the bed, turned off the video camera, unlocked the bedroom door, and opened it for Anita, who had been waiting outside in her car. Addressing Anita, I remarked, "Well, Anita, I saved you some of him. His face isn't much to look at now, though. Here's his latest lover, my soon-to-be ex-wife." "Sarah, do you have anything to say to her?" Anita approached Sarah, sitting on the bed, and slapped her hard across the left cheek, evening out the red marks on her face. Expressing her frustration, Anita berated Sarah for her foolishness and revealed how highly she had regarded the man lying on the floor. Turning to me, Anita pondered, "What are we going to do with him now?" "Anita, I'm inclined to toss this one out the door with no clothes on and see how long it takes her to find another companion. Get it?" "Companion," I said with a smirk. Relieved that Anita had preserved his tool for me, I mentioned having a razor-sharp new hunting knife and suggested cutting off his tool to present it to Sarah, who seemed to adore it. Additionally, I considered stashing his balls in a vault for the safety of women in the town. I intended to enforce my prenup, putting his balls in a vice, as he would get nothing if caught cheating. We planned to escort him to the hospital, providing a fabricated story about finding him injured in the garage. This would ensure his cooperation, knowing he could be cut off without a dime. Perhaps I'd throw him a few crumbs. Regarding Sarah, I mentioned her attachment to her father, and pondered if there was more to their story during her upbringing, though lacking any proof. In the event of a messy divorce, I noted that her father might disinherit her, as he did with her sister, to protect his reputation and substantial inheritance. Even after the divorce, I would retain intriguing videos to share if necessary, keeping her in check. I decided to let her get dressed, take her car, and find a place to reflect, cautioning that her ATM and credit cards wouldn't work. I provided her with a quarter, sarcastically remarking it was for a two-bit fancy woman. Maintaining a distant friendship with Anita, we sometimes reached out to each other when feeling low, both hesitant to dive into another relationship after being burned. I acknowledged the pain caused by my harsh treatment of Sarah during the ordeal, recognizing it wasn't the real me. Despite likening it to war, where cruelty can emerge, I vowed never to be in that position again. However, I had no regrets about marring Buddy's face. Anita's insurance covered basic repairs to Buddy's face, and she cut him loose with a little more money than the prenup required. His attempts to attract women proved challenging in the ensuing months. My depression deepened, and I faded from sight. Sarah accepted a fair settlement and moved in with her sister, seeking help. She grappled with the severe miscalculation of her actions, feeling sick when watching nature shows about animals of prey. Terms like alpha dog or pecking order triggered discomfort, and nightmares about that night with Buddy and me occasionally haunted her. Despite occasional feelings of missing me, I harbored no such sentiments toward her. But as I stood there, watching the aftermath of everything that had unraveled, a thought struck me. Was this the end, or just another beginning? What would you do if you found yourself in my shoes? Could you have handled it differently, or would you have done the same? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. I'd love to hear how you would navigate through such a betrayal.